So for all of, or most of all of our lives, terrorism has been a major issue. Whether or not you're actually from the U.S., it's become a global issue. And I believe that a major part of the cause of terrorism in the world today is Saudi funding of terrorism. And I believe that the U.S. should stop supporting the Saudis in their funding of terrorism. Now, essentially, what Saudi Arabia has done for the last 30-some years is they have funded radical groups, radical Islamic groups around the world, and have indoctrinated people within those groups to commit acts of violence worldwide. And through the U.S.'s policies of arms deals and foreign aid to Saudi Arabia, the U.S. has actually been indirectly supporting these radical groups, and it's fairly obvious that it's happening. So what I want to look at today is how Saudi Arabia funds terrorism worldwide, how the U.S. is involved, and what we can do to help stop that. Now, according to Ramtanu Maitra of the Executive Intelligence Review, Saudi money has armed and trained terrorists in Russia's Chechnya, Dagestan, North Ossetia, and Ingushetia regions, as well as in Pakistan, along the Afghanistan-Pakistan borders, in the Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan belt in Central Asia, and also in Europe, particularly in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And according to F. Michael Malouf, who's a journalist, ISIS has received a significant number of U.S. manufactured M16 assault rifles from Saudi Arabia, and those rifles actually had labels on them that said property of U.S. government on them. So clearly Saudi Arabia is funding terrorism, and they are funding terrorism and giving terrorists weapons and money that they receive from the United States. And just as an example of the impact that this terrorism can have, according to Andrei Volchek and Rossi Indira, who are investigative international journalists, Saudi Arabian-funded Sunni extremist group drove 300 Shiite Muslims, which is a different denomination essentially of Islam, from their houses in a village called Nankernang, and pillaged and destroyed their property. And then a few months later, the remainder of those Shiites in the village, which was about 170, fled to refugee camps to avoid violence in the area that was caused by Saudi funding of these groups. And you can hear about this and say, well, this is bad, but why is this a problem for us? And the reason is essentially that Saudi Arabia has been funding this extremism with U.S. weapons, and the government of the U.S. hasn't been doing anything about that. Now, the U.S. is involved in funding the Saudi government despite the fact that we've realized that they're not good, and we're technically not allowed to send them aid. According to the Congressional Research Service, which is a body of the government that does research for members of Congress on topics in upcoming legislation, quote, Congress has enacted prohibitions on international military education and training and other foreign assistance to Saudi Arabia in annual appropriations legislation, subject to waiver provisions, and both the Bush and Obama administrations have subsequently issued waivers enabling that assistance to continue. So, although technically U.S. aid to Saudi Arabia is banned, the last several presidents have continued to waive the ban on U.S. weapons sales to Saudi, and the reason that this is really an issue is because the small amount of funding that they do receive, again, according to the Congressional Research Service, makes them eligible for a significant discount on military hardware and equipment. And just to give you an idea of how much they buy, according to journalist Murray Atkinson, back in 2015, toward the end of 2015, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia announced an arms export deal worth $1.75 billion. So Saudi Arabia buys quite a bit of equipment from the U.S. And what we can do about this is we can encourage our legislators to end Saudi Arabia, make the aid to Saudi Arabia not conditional on presidential waiver, and we should just in general be more aware of where federal money, where our tax dollars are being spent. So what we've seen here is that like an example of tax dollars being misused essentially is that Saudi Arabia funds terror with the US's help. That terror it's come back and it's It's killed U.S. citizens. It's killed them in Iraq. It's killed them in 9/11, and it's killed them in the Boston Marathon bombings, and a number of other examples. And essentially, this could have all been avoided if, in general, U.S. citizens were more aware of where exactly their tax dollars are being spent. Thank you.